Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis. And in Mitzvah Hashem today, we will learn Daf Ayin Ches Amid Beis. Very complex little Siman over here. Very Negea L'Maisa. We'll try to deal with it in a concise, clear fashion. So, we begin on the very top of Ayin Ches Amid Beis. Siman Kuf Ayin Vav Sha'apas Peter Esa Parperes. The halacha that the berachah of hamotzi that you make on bread by a seudah will pater parperes. Well, what is parperes? Let's take a look in the Shulchan Aruch. Ubay sif echad, here we have one sif. Says the mechaber sif aleph. Birach al hapas, when you make a berachah of hamotzi on bread, pater esa parperes. You pater the parperes, which is something which its berachah would normally be a mezonus, but you don't have to make a mezonus on the parperes. Once you make hamotzi on the pas, you don't have to make a mezonus on the parperes. The hamotzi will cover the parperes. What are parperes? Says the mechaber, Dahainu pirurei pas, these are breadcrumbs. Dak, very fine breadcrumbs. Shedibkam im marok oy dvash, that you used either some kind of a soup or a gravy or some kind of a liquid or honey, and you combine them through some kind of a liquid agent. So basically, you've taken breadcrumbs, and you've formed these breadcrumbs into a unified mass using marok or dvash. This is something which clearly would be a mezonus. Says the mechaber, you make a hamotzi on the pas, you patered the parperes. On the other hand, says the mechaber, birach ala parperes, were you to make a mezonus on the parperes before you made hamotzi on the pas, loy patar es a pas. The mezonus on the parperes will not pater the pas. Now you might be wondering where's the chiddush in that, but we're going to see there is a chiddush. Haga, says the Rama, birach ala parperes, if you make a mezonus on parperes, pater maise kedera, you will then pater any kind of grain-based maise kedera. Maise kedera literally is something that you make in a pot. Shuhu daisa, for example, a cooked cereal. So if you make a mezonus on this parperes, you're going to pater the grain-based maise kedera, which is also a mezonus. The chain is similarly in berachah maise kedera, pater esa parperes. Okay. Now let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah, and all of the complexity of today's share lies in the very lengthy Mishnah Berurah Ice Cotton Bays. But before we get to Ice Cotton Bays, we got to do Ice Cotton Aleph. So the Mechaber said that parperes, what's parperes? It's pirurei pas, breadcrumbs that are dak, and then you combine them with some kind of liquid agent. Says the Mishnah Berurah, dak, she'ein ben kazayis. If it's dak, clearly each piece of breadcrumb, each breadcrumb is less than a kazayis. V'gam avad mehem toyar lechem. Once you take bread and you grind it so fine into breadcrumbs, there's no question it no longer has teresa denama. It doesn't have toyar lechem anymore. It doesn't look like bread. So what do you have here? You have bread. This was a very complex siman that we learned a while back. Over here, you have bread that you now have reduced to something that's the pieces are less than a kazayis, and it doesn't have toyar lechem. Therefore, it no longer has hamotzi. So sheberchasan beri mina mezonus. So this parperes preparation, say that 10 times fast, parperes preparation, is something whose berachah would be a mezonus. K'mavur b'simin kuf samin ches sif yud. Ubikam nevertheless, Patalu pas, the berachah of hamotzi on the pas is going to pater you for making a mezonus on the parperes. Why? Mipnei she'em tfelim legabei, because the parperes is considered a tuffle to the pas. So the hamotzi on the ikar on the pas is going to pater the mezonus on the parperes, which is a tuffle. V'hareihem nechshavin k'maise kedera. This parperes would be no different than any other grain-based maise kedera, which the pas pleitrasan, where the halacha is that the berachah on the pas paters any grain-based Maisei Kedera. Now we come to Mishnah Berurah's cut base. Berachah ala parperes. So the Mechaber told me here, if you make a mezainos on the parperes, you don't pater the pas. So you sat down to a seudah, and you're going to be washing by this seudah. Before you sat down, before you went to wash and make hamotzi on the pas, they served you some parperes. So you made a mezainos on the parperes. Is there a possibility that the mezainos on the parperes exempts you from making hamotzi on the pas? Says the Mechaber, no. Says the Mishnah Berurah's cut base. The derechu lahaviam kaidem asuda. It was the derech to serve this parperes before the seudah. L'tainug, it was a delicacy. It was something very tasty. Oy lahamshech alev la'achila, or for it to act as a farshpeis, to act as an appetizer, something that draws on the appetite. With appetit come to essen. V'loy pater as a pas. However, the mezainos on this parperes will not pater the pas. Kevin the berachah on beri min mezainos, because it's a different bracha. The parperes is a mezainos, not a hamotzi. The Kasa b'shita b'kubetzes, but the shita b'kubetzes writes, she'af im kivein beferish liftar. Shita b'kubetzes wants you to know that this halacha goes a step further, and that is, it's not only that the mezainos on the parperes does not automatically pater the hamotzi on the pas. Even were you to make the mezainos on the parperes with specific kavanah that it should cover the pas, still it will not cover the pas, and you're going to have to make a hamotzi on the pas. Sha'af im kiven beferish liftar loy mahani. It's still not going to cover it. Now, why is this a chiddush? Obviously, if the Shita B'Kubetzes writes it, and the Chofetz Chaim saw fit to bring it down in the Mishnah Berurah, there's a chiddush here. So let's take a look at a very, very interesting Sharat Tzion over here. Sharat Tzion Ois Cotton Base. Says the Chofetz Chaim, the Kosav Sham, the Shita B'Kubetzes writes over there that there is indeed a significant chiddush here. Sha'af de ba'alma poiter b'di'eved berkas paraminim mezainos lepas. The halacha is b'di'eved. If you went ahead and you made a mezainos on pas, you sat down to eat a tuna fish sandwich and you klutzed up. Instead of making hamotzi, you accidentally made a paraminim mezainos. What's the halacha? The halacha is that b'di'eved paraminim mezainos does cover pas. So if you're telling me that b'di'eved paraminim mezainos covers pas, so over here somebody sat down to eat parperes, he made a mezainos on the parperes, but he had in das, his kavanah was that the mezainos should cover the pas. If the halacha is that b'di'eved mezainos covers pas, so why doesn't that mezainos on the parperes cover the pas? Says the Shita B'Kubetzes, weiter here in the Sharat Tzion, Hainu, that halacha, that b'di'eved mezainos could cover pas, Hainu heicha shebirech rak aloisai pas. That's when you sat down and you made a mezainos only on a piece of bread. De'ein laha bracha al malachol. The bracha can't land on anything else. You took a tuna fish sandwich, you made a paraminim mezainos. You're not eating anything else. So the only place for the bracha of mezainos to land is on the bread. In that case, we will say that b'di'eved, you made a mezainos on bread, and if we don't allow the mezainos to cover the bread, the mezainos is going to be a bracha of HaTorah. There's nothing else for it to go on. So then we're going to say that b'di'eved, the mezainos is going to cover the bread. Aval kan, but in our case, where you went ahead and you made a mezainos on parperes. Now you had in kavanah that your mezainos on the parperes should also cover the bread, but you made the mezainos on the parperes. Aval kan shebirek ala parperes ela de b'machshavtei choshav lifter apas einay paiter. Over here, there's no need to say that the parperes should cover the pas. The bracha of the mezainos will land on the parperes. So you made a mezainos, fine, eat the parperes. Are we going to let it cover the pas? No, it's the wrong bracha. Ad kan dvarav ayin sham. Now it happens to be that I had this kasha right away, and in the Dirshu footnote, they bring down a kasha from the Chazon Ish. They bring down a kasha, let me find which footnote it was. This is not a pashada Sharat Tzion at all. It's Dirshu footnote number 8. The Hiksha Chazon Ish, the Chazon Ish asks, Medivri HaShulchan Aruch L'Kamon, from something the Mechaber is going to say in Siman Reish Vav. Shekosav, when the Mechaber writes, Shemin Shahayu Lefanav Priha Adama Upriha Eitz. Let's say you had in front of you a pickle and an apple. Ubirech Bari Priha Adama al Priha Adama. You made a Adama on the pickle. V'niskavein liftar is Priha Eitz. And you had kavana when you made the Adama on the pickle that it should also cover the apple. Now let's stop here for a second and let's analyze this. The halacha is that b'di'eved, a Bari Priha Adama patters a fruit. If you accidentally made a Bari Priha Adama on an apple, you don't make another bracha. Why? Because what's an apple? An apple is a Priha Adama. We give it its own bracha of Bari Priha Eitz because since it grew on a tree, we could be more specific. This is a Priha Eitz. It's separate. It's a separate category. But if it grows on a tree, it does ultimately come from the ground. So b'di'eved, the halach is that Bari Priha Adama covers a peri. It covers a fruit. Now over here, this person has a pickle and an apple. He made a Bari Priha Adama on the pickle, and he handed kavanah to cover the apple. Isn't that the same exact case that we have over here in the Sharet Tzion? Over here, the case that we just learned is somebody has parperis, a mezainos, and he has pas, hamotzi. The halakha is that b'di'eved, mezainos covers hamotzi. The same way b'di'eved, ha'adama covers Bari Priha Eitz. This person went ahead, he made a mezainos on the parperis, having in das to cover the pas. Isn't that the same as the one who made ha'adama on the pickle, having kavanah to cover the apple? And over there, by the case of the pickle and the apple, the Mechaber says, Yotza, you don't make a Bari Priha Eitz on the apple. You're covered with the Bari Priha Adama. The Mishnah Berurah does bring down that there are those who disagree, but but over there, the Mishnah Berurah rules Savik brachas lahakal, and you pater the apple with the pickle, with the Bari Priha Adama. You don't make a Bari Priha Eitz. V'ilu kan sasam shelo yatsa. And over here, he's saying not that way. Now, take a look in footnote number 8. I gave you the kasha. If you want to see a teretz, take a look at the footnote over there. He brings down a teretz to this kasha from Rav Vosner. But the teretz is not such a simple teretz, so I'm going to leave you with the kasha and ayin sham v'tim tzanachas. Okay. So, now we have covered the easy part of today's shir, and we've covered the easy part of the Mishnah Berurah Ice Cut Bays. Now we get into the complex part. So fasten your seatbelts. So what are we speaking about over here? What happened? Somebody went ahead and he made a mezainos on parperis. He made the mezainos on parperis. Now he's going to wash and he's going to make hamotzi and he's going to eat pas. Okay, what happens now with berachah acharonah? At the end of his seudah, he's going to bench. Does the benching pater the parperis? Or do you make an ala michya on the parperis before you go to wash? Now, if this sounds familiar, we dealt with this kind of shaila at length when we were talking about, let's say, yayin before the seudah. You went there and you made a Bari Priha Gafen on yayin before the seudah. Is it covered by benching or not? So here we go again. Now we're talking about mezainos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, U'le'inyin bracha acharonah. When it comes to the question of the bracha acharonah on the parperis, does the parperis get its own alamichya before you sit down and make hamotzi, or do we leave it alone and cover it with benching? Says the Mishnah Berurah, it depends. Im achlan rak l'tainug oil hasbiak tzas. It depends why you ate the parperis. If you ate the parperis, l'tainug. What does that mean, l'tainug? Well, you came in, you sat down, you saw this beautiful parperis with the gooey honey and everything else, and it looks very delicious and very tempting, so I want to eat it l'tainug. L'tainug means for pleasure. It's tasty. That's why I'm eating it. I'm eating it as a standalone dish. I'm eating it as a tasty thing. Oy lahasbiak tzas. Or, well, I'm starved. I know we're about to eat lunch, but I want to take the edge off of my hunger. So I see a nice tasty thing of parperis over here. I'm going to eat the parperes to take the edge off my hunger. In both of those cases, why did you eat the parperes? You ate the parperes as a standalone dish. Did you eat the parperes in any way as a connection to the seudah? No. There's no connection to the seudah here. This is standalone. And now when I finish, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go wash, and I'm going to go into a seudah. I'm going to make a hamotzi on pas. In that case, says the Mishnah Berurah, tzarich levarech aleya berachah acharonah. You're going to have to make a berachah acharonah. What berachah acharonah? Berachah mein shalish. You're going to have to make an alamichya, kaidem seudah. Why? Again, because there's no connection to the seudah. By virtue of what should benching cover this parperes? The halacha of benching is that benching covers Devarim aboyim b'soich seudah, machmas seudah. If it's something that's b'soich seudah, any foods that you eat as part of the seudah are covered by benching. This, I'm sorry, Charlie, was not part of the seudah. You ate it before the seudah. You ate it before the seudah. It needs a berachah acharonah. Go ahead, make an alamichya. What if you did not make a berachah acharonah? So you ate your parperes. You washed, you made hamotzi, you're sitting by the seudah, and now somebody looks at you and says, I saw you were eating parperes before the seudah. It's so interesting. It's mamish in Yonah D'Yoma. My Dirshu Mishnah Berurah happens to be behind, so we just learned about the parperes. I'm wondering, did you make a berachah acharonah on the parperes? Because you were supposed to make an alamichya on the parperes? And you say, no, I didn't. Oh. So now, you didn't make an alamichya on the parperes. You're already, you're already in the middle of the seudah. You're already benched. This conversation happened after benching. After benching, this guy woke up and he says, so whatever happened with that parperes? Did you make a separate alamichya on the parperes? Or did you just go to benching? You say, no, I just went to benching. If you failed to make an alamichya on the parperes, and now you already benched on your seudah, B'diavad berachas hamazon poiter kol minim mezainos. B'diavad, the halacha is that benching covers any minei mezainos. K'moshe kasavdol kabam b'siman reish chesif yudzayin b'Mishnah Berurah in Sham. So you're right, it wasn't connected to the seudah. Aber l'maisa you benched, and l'maisa benching b'diavad covers any mezainos. So b'diavad it's going to be covered. So right now over here we have the first opinion brought down by the Mishnah Berurah, which is the sheet of the Graz. We have the first sheet that brought down over here by the Mishnah Berurah. You ate parperes before the seudah. If you ate them l'tainug oil hasbiak tzas, you ate it as a standalone dish. It's not connected to the seudah. Lechatchila, you should make an alamichya on that parperes. You neglected to make an alamichya on the parperes, and you already benched, okay, b'diavad benching covered it. But certainly, lechatchila, you should have made an alamichya. Next opinion, the Yeshayimrim, however, there is a Yeshayimrim, this is brought down from the Chai Adam, and if you take a look in the Sharet Zion, you'll see that there's a very lengthy ice cut in hay, because the Chavetz Chaim really struggles to figure out and understand this Chai Adam, but he does bring down the sheet of the Chai Adam. The Yeshayimrim, there are those that say, let's say you made a mezainos on the parperes before you washed and before you made hamotzi. Okay. Happens to be that you know that you're going to be eating mezainos during the seudah too. You're going to have a lakshakugel during the seudah. So you're going to be having mezainos toicha seudah also. In that case, says the Chai Adam, very interesting, nechsheves la'achila achas. Now we look at it, that the mezainos that you ate before the seudah, the parperes, combines with the mezainos that you ate toicha seudah. It becomes an achila achas, the yochel af lechatchila lismay chalbirkas hamazon sheyivarach lebasayf. Now the benching that's going to cover the lakshan kugel that you ate toicha seudah will also cover the parperes that you ate before the seudah. So this is the shita of the Chai Adam. Okay, umikal makayim, says the Mishnah Berurah, this Chai Adam notwithstanding, Near the afle deyazu, he thinks even according to the Chayadam, yira lechavid lehedya beberkas hamazon liftar masha achal mikodim. You should have specific das when you bench to cover that parperis that you ate before the seudah. So we have over here two opinions. Again, what happened? What you did was you made a mezainos on the parperis before the seudah. The shaila now becomes: do you make an alamichya on the parperis, or do you go to benching and you let benching be the berachah acharonah on the parperis? The first opinion said, well, if you ate this parperis as a standalone dish, then it needs its own alamichya. There's no reason under the sun that it shouldn't get its own alamichya. He says, b'di'evet, if you went straight to benching, no, b'di'evet, benching is going to cover it. But that's certainly not lechatchila. The second opinion, the Chayadam throws in a caveat. The Chayadam says it depends. If you're going to eat mine mezainos during the seudah as well, you're going to have laksha kugel during the seudah, you're going to have one of them muffins over there with whatever in them, that's also mezainos. You're going to have mine mezainos during the seudah. So then somehow the parperis that you eat before the seudah and the mezainos that you eat teicha seudah become nechshav la'achila achas, and since benchik will cover one, benchik will cover the other, but he says, but you should have in mind to pater it. Writes Rav Moshe Zechon of Kosher in the Igris that Hayois, that the Mishnah Berurah likes the first opinion much better. We should go with the first opinion. We shouldn't worry about a bracha she'ein tzricha, and you should make an alamichya. You had parperis before the seudah, you should make an alamichya. Okay. Now, like I always say, where does this come back to us? So let's go a little weiter, and we'll start to see where it comes back to us. Vayin b'biur halacha, he says, take a look at the biur halacha, shebiyarnu, where I explain, le'inyan mashanu oichlan akar kiddush b'shachris. We make kiddush before the seudah, and we eat lekach, the kichlach, the chadoima, nachan yoser. It would be better, sha'af l'dei rishona, that even according to the first opinion that I just brought down, that says that you should make an alamichya on the mezainos that you ate before the seudah, lo yivarach alei berachah acharonah koydem seudah. The cake that you eat by kiddush before the seudah, you should not make an alamichya, ela yifterenu beberachas hamazon. Rather, you should go ahead and you should pater it with benching. Now, why? The reason given in the biur halacha is because, if you remember, when we were learning about pasa babakistin, we had several different definitions of pasa babakistin. One definition of pasa babakistin was a knish, or, something, dough that's filled. It's filled with peiros, it's filled with nuts and sugar, it's filled with potatoes, right? So something like that, that's pasa babakistin. We had another pshat that pasa babakistin is like pretzels, something that's thin and hard. That's pasa babakistin. Then we had another pshat that cake is pasa babakistin. It's made out of kemach, it's made out of flour, but it's got a lot of flavorings and a lot of sugar. So that's pasa. We had a lot of definitions of pasa babakistin, and the Mishnah Berurah ultimately said that halacha l'maisa, we treat all of them like pasa babakistin. We go according to all the shittas, we consider all of them to be pasa babakistin. Why? Essentially, it's because safek brachas lahakal. Because if we're going to take something, if we have a suffix, if something is pasa babakistin or not, so what are our choices? If we make it pas, then it needs hamotzi and it needs benching. If we make it pasa babakistin, it's a mezainos and a berachah achas mein shalosh. So it comes out that if we treat it as pas, we're going to make more brachas than if we treat it as pasa babakistin. Therefore, safek brachas lahakal, we want to make less brachas, so we consider everything to be pasa babakistin. Therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah over here, if you ate something which is only pasa babakistin misafek before your seudah, so it's not pashut like what we're saying over here. Parperis is not a suffix. Parperis, we know, is a mezainos. So by parperis, the day Rishona says you ate parperes before the seudah, it needs an alamichya. Make an alamichya and don't look to pater it with benching. But pasa baba kisnin reasons the Chavetz Chaim in a very lengthy bir halacha here, and that's what he's referring to here. Pasa baba kisnin misafik, maybe it's really pas. If it's really pas, then really it does need benching. It's not, should we pater it with benching or not? No, if it's pas, it really needs benching. So says the Chavetz Chaim, if you ate pasa baba kisnin before the seudah, specifically the type of pasa baba kisnin that we consider to be pasa baba kisnin misafik, like a kichel, something that's hard, right? That's pasa baba kisnin misafik. So if you ate something which is pasa baba kisnin misafik before the seudah, don't go run to make an alamichya. Leave it alone. Pater it with benching at the end of the seudah, because maybe it's really pas gomor. And if it's really pas gomor, it really does need benching. That's the rationale of the Chavetz Chaim over here. And he continues, the choshkein, certainly, im oichel hamin kistin gam b'soich seudah. If you know that you're going to eat pasa baba kistin during the seudah, let's say you know that you're going to be served cake for dessert. The choshkein, im oichel hamin kistin gam b'soich seudah. And now, what you want to do is, you know that you're going to eat pasa baba kistin for dessert. Pasa baba kistin for dessert. We had a bir halacha earlier that says it's not kedai to make a mezainos b'soich seudah. Do not make a bari mina mezainos on cake for dessert. Even though it's a shaila, we don't know what to do with it. You're eating it l'kinuach. You're eating it for dessert. You're eating it to put a nice taste in your mouth. You're not eating it machbas seudah. So maybe it's not covered by the hamotzi. It's a suffix. Maybe it does need a separate bracha. But on the other hand, it's also pasa baba kisnin misafik. Maybe it's really hamotzi. So the Mishnah Berurah ruled, do not make a mezainos on cake for dessert. But if you're going to have cake by kiddush, you have a very good out. Make a mezainos on the cake by kiddush. Have in mind to pater the cake that you're going to eat for dessert. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if you do that, let me find a place here. The choshkein, im oichel hamin kistin gam b'soich seudah. If you're going to eat pasa baba kistin for dessert, ubebirkas bari mina mezainos shemavarich kaidem seudah pater gam oisam. So now what you do is, before the seudah, the cake that you eat by kiddush, right before the seudah, you'll make a mezainos and you'll have in mind to cover the pasa baba kistin that you're eating for dessert. L'kulei alma niftar nakol bebirkas hamazon. Now everybody would agree that the cake that you ate by kiddush doesn't need an alamichya, it will be covered by benching. Mipnei de kol zeh shaykh l'seudah. Because now you made your cake shaykh to the seudah. How? You linked it with the brachas. What you did was, now instead of it being that you're eating a piece of kokosh before the cake, before the seudah, as a standalone dish, and now you have a shaila, does it need an alamichya or is it covered by benching later? Now you linked your piece of kokosh to the seudah. How? Because when you made the mezainos on the kokosh, you had in mind to pater the 7-layer cake that you're going to eat b'soich seudah for dessert. So you linked it. Now that you linked it, the same way benching is going to cover the 7-layer cake, it's also going to cover the kokosh. Okay. All right. I'm going to do something that I did not originally intend to do, but I see that it makes sense. And that is, we're a half an hour into the shir, and the rest of this Mishnah Berurah is quite complex and very negei l'maisa. So I'm going to stop over here, and I'm going to continue with the next shir. We'll pick up by the word va'agav atik, and then I'll be able to go through it in a nice, clear way, and I'll be able to take the time to speak about some shailos l'maisa and what the halacha l'maisa would be. Okay, so we're going to stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah, the source of limud HaTorah. Should give me on ganz Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe should send Yeshua for his panas and shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the geula shlema with the Bias Goel Tzedek B'meher V'Yameinu Amen. And of course, I forgot to say at the beginning of this year, Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael on the Seudah Batzara B'Shivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayam U'Bein Bayabasha Amakim Yerachem Aleim V'Yitzim Yitzar L'Revacha Me'afel L'A'ir B'Shibur L'Geula Hashta B'Gala Zman Kariv V'Ne'emar Amen. Be well.